Hello everyone, my name is Heather and welcome to the channel Bookables. Today I'm here to do a recent reads video. Today I'm talking about 4 books that have released this month and I'm going to answer the question, are these new releases worth reading or not? I have 4 very different genre books, but they're all kind of fallish, spooky kind of thing. So as always, I'm going to leave timestamps down below if you want to hear about one particular book. But the books I will be talking about today are The September House by Carissa Orlando, The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic by Brianne Randall, The Unmaking of June Farrow, I never know how to pronounce that, by Adrienne Young, and Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison. Like I said, all of these came out this month, so they're all brand new. And I know if you're like me, I like keeping up with new releases and whether or not I should read them or not. And I'm going to talk about all of them today. So first up, we have The September House. So I was going to read this in October because it's spooky, it's a horror novel, but I was like, it's called The September House, so I should probably read it in September. And I'm glad I did because I really enjoyed it. It was a fun horror novel that was spooky at times, but for the most part kind of was satire, also kind of funny, yet a lot of in-depth stuff too. It had a lot going on in it. So in this book, we follow our character Margaret. Margaret has always wanted to own her own house. She's always been house hunting. Her and her husband have always been on the search for that perfect house. And what do you know? They find the perfect one after many years of like always just renting and being in apartments and things like that. They find this beautiful old Victorian house that has like turrets that is just like the picture. It's just like literally the house of their dreams. Like it's old school, it's kind of furnished, it's got 2 stories, and it's just beautiful. And what's even great about it is it comes at an amazing price, like almost too good of amazing price. You'll understand why. So they buy the house, everything's going great, and then they start noticing some things, you know, maybe the house is a little bit haunted. They start seeing ghosts, and you know, when September hits, the walls bleed blood, like they actually produce blood. It always starts off at the top floors, and by the time September comes down to the end, it's like blood everywhere. Also, it gets really intense. Some of these ghosts are violent, and you know what? How Margaret's husband just cannot keep up with this. He hates it. He wants to move. And Margaret's like, no, this is finally my home. This is the house of my dreams. I am not leaving. And then what do you know? One day Hal leaves and Margaret is dealing with this all on her own. September's about to roll around and her daughter, who is fully grown, calls her and like, where's dad? I'm coming home. We're going to find out where dad is. And it's literally the start of September. And so Margaret is trying to, you know, keep her daughter at bay from not seeing these ghosts, from not seeing this blood. And it just sounds insane, you know? It's all about what Margaret will do to be in her house and keep her house. And I've had a lot of comments where when I've talked about this book, a lot of people were like, with the housing economy this day and age and interest rates, like I would stay in that house too. Which I understand. But it is just a very funny kind of novel because when you're reading this, you know, you're reading this from Margaret's point of view, and Margaret's lived in this house for years. So she has grown accustomed to these ghosts. She's grown accustomed to the blood. She's grown accustomed to the moaning and yelling every night in September. So to you as a reader, it's not that big of a deal because to Margaret, she's used to it. I think if it was like her discovering this for the first time, we'd all be freaked out. But Margaret has already kind of like told us like, this is just how it is and this is just how my house is. So you're just like, okay. And September's always a really big deal because September is like where things get really scary. Like nobody goes in the basement because that's like where the baddest ghost of all. And it is just a fun book. Overall, I would give this book a 4 out of 5. I enjoyed it. I would think it's a great book to read near the spooky season. It's one I think that are good for maybe horror novices like myself that don't like things really too scary. I mean, when it got to the end, it was quite frightening. I was like, oh my gosh, this is literally like a horror movie. And I think this would be a fun horror movie, honestly. Like it would be kind of satirical, but also creepy in a way, like kind of like maybe Cabin in the Woods maybe. But I enjoyed it. I also enjoyed Margaret's drive. Like she has endured so much in her life. With her marriage to Hal, it was very emotionally abusive, physically abusive. He was an alcoholic, and her daughter doesn't have the best relationship with either of them. So Margaret has endured a lot in her life, and she is fighting for this house that she wants, that is her house, and she ain't going down without a fight. Let me tell you that right now, because she ain't leaving. And it's just a very interesting novel. Moving on to a lot of people's really most anticipated book this fall is The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic by Brienne Randall. This book is one that caught everybody's interest, including myself, because I think the main thing is the cover looks beautiful. Anytime you have like kind of a magic-y, witchy book, I think is really big. Also, they're marketing it as it says for fans of Practical Magic and Gilmore Girls, which I think is like all of us. You guys know Gilmore Girls is my favorite all-time show. I never talk about that show. But you know, it definitely appealed to me when I heard that. So of course I had to read it to see if it lived up to that. And for me, I think it was pretty good. As time goes on, I think when I first finished it, I was like 4.5. But as time goes on, it's been a week or two since I finished it, I will definitively say it's a 4 out of 5. It was good. It's a good witchy book. It's a good family book. It's a sad book. It wasn't like over like profound or anything like that for me, but I enjoyed it. This book follows a character named Sadie, and Sadie is a witch. Her whole family is witches. They have just known how to do witchcraft or whatever you want to call it, and each of them has different powers. One in the family can like know exactly what the other person needs. Another in the family can just like have a calming presence. Another one in the family could, you know, they just have different type of things. Sadie's is kind of cooking. She owns a like coffee shop slash bakery in town with her grandmother. They're really rooted in cooking things. They'll talk about lavender a lot and honey and how they'll kind of use those ingredients for like fortitude or strength and things like that. And the town has accepted them. They know that this family is of the witchy variety and they are totally okay with it. But each one of them in their family that are witches always have a curse that they have, and each one of their curses is different. Sadie's curse is she will have 4 heartbreaks and then she will lose her magic. So Sadie's always been very closed off because of this curse. She doesn't want to lose her magic because that is who she is. But by the time this book starts, she's already had 2 or 4 heartbreaks, so she's closed off more than ever. Her first heartbreak was when the love of her life, Jake, she did not mean to fall in love with him, it just happened, just kind of up and left her. Like, he broke her heart, and that was her big first heartbreak. Then she has a twin brother named Seth, who they've been attached to the hip ever since they were born. He decides also to leave. So she's already had her 2 heartbreaks, and she is just very scared of anything. And she also learns in this book that her grandmother is dying. That's not spoiling anything. That's in the tag, that's in the synopsis and everything. So you can see where her 3rd heartbreak's probably going to come from. So, and her grandmother is kind of the patriarch. Her grandmother's the matriarch of this whole family. Like, they all kind of cling to her because she is kind of like the head of the family. And Sadie has always lived with her grandmother because she doesn't even know her mother. Her mother left her when she was not even like an infant, really, like right after she was born. And it's just about family, if you will, because when the book kind of starts off, you learn that her grandmother's dying. Jake comes back into town to move in, and then her brother comes back because her grandmother's dying. And it's all about Sadie opening up to the idea of love and not being so closed off, and also dealing with her grandmother passing and how she's going to have to carry on the torch for this family with this magic, because magic is so enclosed in who she is, and she doesn't know who she is without it. So I really enjoyed it. Each chapter ends with a different recipe that was really fun. The first recipe is carrot cake cookies with cream cheese frosting, which sounds amazing. These will humble the eater and remind them of their roots, when they came from. Carrots help you to understand. To find fulfillment, you have to seek answers from your past, no matter how gritty it is. The salt and cinnamon ensure that those traditions and memories will be protected. Focus on positivity while baking, or they'll turn out bitter. I adapted this recipe from my uncle's son, who brought a bag back of lunar white carrot seeds from his tour in Vietnam. So it's just very interesting. It's steeped in that magical. So when it says, you know, for fans of Practical Magic and Gilmore Girls, it's definitely for fans of Practical Magic. If you love Practical Magic as they're, you know, mixing and concocting and all of that kind of stuff with the family elements, they come from a rich history of witches. It definitely fits the bill on that. This is definitely for fans of Practical Magic. For Gilmore Girls, I'm not sure. I could see where they're going with it because it's a small town where everybody knows everybody, but it didn't quite have that Stars Hollow feel to me. I can understand why they could say that, but I would say this is more for fans of Practical Magic because the witchy vibes are here, which I enjoyed. So I give it a 4 out of 5, and I would recommend it. It was a good time. It was sad. It's not one I'm going to be returning to anytime soon, but I liked it. And we have The Unmaking of June Farrow. Farrow, I don't know how to say it, by Adrienne Young. So I read Adrienne Young's first adult novel last year called Spells for Forgetting and loved it. It was very atmospheric. The writing was beautiful. I just fell in love with it. So I was very much anticipating this one. This one might be my most anticipated release of the entire fall because I just love that one so much. And I have to say, I really enjoyed this one too. This one is gonna be very tricky to explain because I didn't really know what the plot was going into it. I kind of, didn't know. Even after reading it, I went back and looked at the synopsis, and the synopsis didn't really give anything away with the plot. So I don't want to really spoil you because I think it's best to go in this book not knowing. I will tell you what the whole how I'm going to do this is I'm going to tell you my overall feelings about it. Then I'm going to let you know what the whole big plot is. I will warn you. And in case you don't want to know, that's totally fine. And yeah, I don't know. Overall, I give this book a 4.5. So what I loved about Spells for Forgetting, like I said, it was very atmospheric, very kind of steeped in this creepy kind of spooky island. And it was just, like I said, the whole setting was like a character of its own. The plot in Spells for Forgetting wasn't 100% there for me. We can take the complete opposite for this book. So this book, the plot was great for me. The characters were great for me. The setting wasn't very amazing. It wasn't super atmospheric. It doesn't scream overtly fall or anything. So I love both of these books for different reasons. Like Spells for Forgetting, atmospheric, setting, just great writing. This one, again, great writing. Not atmospheric, but love the plot and characters and things like that. So overall, like I told you, I would give this book a 4.5 out of 5. I really loved it. I think if you enjoyed her last book, Spells for Forgetting, I think you would enjoy this one. And I can't really say anything else about it without spoiling you of what the whole plot is. I'm not going to tell you like a big secret or anything, but it's best to go into it not knowing because I don't think you would expect it. It does kind of have some witchy vibes. It's June, and June has lived with her grandmother all of her life, and the Farrow women have always known that they're gonna get sick in the way of when they get older, they'll probably start seeing hallucinations and things that really aren't there. And so at the beginning of this book, June's grandmother has passed away, and June has started to see these hallucinations herself, and she's trying to deal with that. And she's trying to learn if there really are hallucinations or if there's something else. Hint, hint, some other things. That's all I can tell you about it. That's really it. But I will tell you if you want to know. I'll put a spoilers up there for you. So here we go. So this book is about time travel. Never thought it would be about time travel, but here we are. It was very reminiscent to The Time Traveler's Wife. Basically, the Farrow woman can travel through time. They start seeing hallucinations, hearing things, and they also see a red door. When you go through that red door, you go through a different time period. June ends up in 1951, and she goes to that land and she learns that she's already married and has a kid, and she's like, what? And it's just confusing. The whole aspect with the time travel, by the end of it, I did feel still somewhat confused of like, how could this happen? But it was interesting. I really enjoyed how they did it and how it's about family. And, you know, at the end, it did not really make that much sense, but I really liked it. So the whole plot's about time travel, which I would have never guessed while reading the synopsis or just kind of going into it without knowing anything. But I have to say, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. Like I said, I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5. I just really love Adrienne Young's adult books. I really do. The last book we have is totally different. The first three I feel like I talked about were kind of witchy, like had that spooky type of vibe. This one's spooky in a different way. It's Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison. So Rachel Harrison is a horror author. I always say she's a horror author for horror novices. You know, her books aren't really overtly scary. I would kind of put her in the same vein with like Grady Hendrix, where they're kind of satire-y, kind of, you know, funny in a way. And this one is my favorite by her so far. I have read Cackle by her, and I also read her book last year called Such Sharp Teeth, which is about kind of like werewolves and stuff. This one, man, is intense. So in this book, we follow a character named Vesper, and Vesper is the black sheep of the family, if you will. She grew up in a very strict religious community cult, and she decided to leave at age 18. And usually when you leave something of that kind of, you know, a very strict religious things, you're not welcome back, and you can't talk to anybody. You're kind of like ostracized, if you will. And so 6 years later, Vesper is very surprised to come home one day to see a wedding invitation at her doorstep for her cousin that still lives with the kind of on the family farm, if you will. And she learns that her cousin is not only getting married, but married to Vesper's first love, Brody. And so she's like, what the heck? Why am I getting invited? But you know what? I'm gonna have to go back because I want to see why they're getting married. Like, my cousin and my first love, like, what the heck? And so she decides to go back, and that's when you start learning things about her family, how, you know, yes, they are a super strict religious kind of community, but they're also, they worship the devil. They're a satanic cult. Like, I was not expecting that. Like, the first night she goes back, it's the rehearsal dinner. They're saying the blessing. Everything's going great. And at the end, they go, "Hail Satan." And I was like, what? Like, what the heck? And they it's just like it's a normal thing for them, which I guess you can make the argument if you've grown up in that kind of community, you can say the same thing. As for me, I'm religious. I'm a Christian. So it was very interesting, to say the least, to read about a satanic cult. Like, they would just be talking and they would be like, Satan has delivered you to us. Like, hail Satan. There's going to be hellfire and brimstone. It's going to be unleashed on the earth. And I'm like, what the crap? And this is just their norm. Like, they all have to wear these pentagram necklaces. Not only that, but like, Vesper does not have a good relation with her mom. Her mom is an indie horror actress. Like, she is famous. She's like a cult indie horror actress. And her mom like kind of hates her. Her mom also lives in this really old kind of Victorian house where props from her old movies are in her house, like a skeleton. She gave Vesper like a glass eyeball from one of her sets when she was 6. And Vesper's like, thanks. And her mom's like really offended that she doesn't like it. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I wouldn't like that gift now. Why would you give that to a 6-year-old? So it's just like, it's so interesting. And also, Vesper has never known really her father. She's seen him on occasion, but she wants to know about him, and her mom never tells her about him. That'll come into play later. And it's just all about her going back and things going absolutely badass crazy is the way to describe this book. Will you have to suspend your disbelief for this book? Absolutely. But I think you have to do that with all of her books. Out of all her books, though, this is my favorite. Vesper was very, like, just very sarcastic. Like, when things were happening to her, she was like, oh, and I'm just like, what? It's interesting, to say the least. It's all about like a very interesting family that's in a satanic cult, and I'll leave it at that. It was fun. Dare I say it was fun? It was interesting. I really enjoyed it. 4.5 out of 5. So there you have my thoughts and feelings on these 4 September releases. Honestly, I liked all of them, and I would recommend all of them for each different ways. If you want something really crazy, The September House and Black Sheep will fit the bill for you. If you want something a little bit more lyrical, a little bit deeper in prose, and kind of a sadder story, both The Unmaking of June Farrow and The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic, super long titles, will fit the bill for you in that remark. So I liked them all, and I would recommend them all. So September is really doing good for releases, I would say. So I would love to know if you've read any of these, what your thoughts are on them. Did you think it was this crazy too for this book? Let me know. As always, thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.